So as soon as earnings was over, I knew that I had to have Brian on because Brian would not have a single thing to contribute. It would be unique and special. Is that correct, Brian? You have nothing, right?
No, I think I have a few ideas.
Anyway, if you like having Brian Wang on the show, please hit like and subscribe, notify. I've got a lineup coming up this weekend. You are not going to believe all the great guests I have this weekend to talk about where is the future with Tesla, because the future is ever more amazing. As I said this morning in my first video this morning, if you want to go check that out, you can. I'm buying. This is like the best opportunity. This stock is never going to be this low again. All right. Follow Brian everywhere. It's Next Big Future. Wherever he is, that's what it is. Nextbigfuture.com is his primary place where he's creating content right now. And that content is fabulous. All right, Brian. It hit you right here in the middle of the forehead. What was it? What happened yesterday?
Well, the two biggest things, of course, are the FSD licensing, but then also on the energy and battery side. So 4680s, hearing that they're growing it by 80% quarter over quarter, that's a huge thing because basically it's nearly doubling. So that means at their 1 gigawatt hour or so per for the one line that they have in Texas, if they have 8% growth next two quarters, then they're at 3.6 or so gigawatt hours, and
per
then
quarter.
Per quarter, which means that they would be closing in on the 6 gigawatt hours, which would be their full 25 gigawatt hours for each line that they would have for the 100 gigawatt hours for Texas. And then open up the next three lines at roughly now, so that they also ramp up. Then you could get to your 100 gigawatt run rate Q1 of 2024.
Cool. Yeah, so that'd be great. Yeah. So and so that was huge because we need, of course, those that capacity, the 4680 capacity, both for the Cybertruck, also for the semi-truck, and then also for Model Ys. I assume that at a certain point they could convert 100% of at least Texas over to 4680s on the Model Ys.
Yeah. Yeah, and then they talk about increasing the energy density for the next version of it. So that means that they talked about getting the phased introduction of like adding more complexity to the batteries, and then that's before adding in silicon to the anode and magnesium and other components to further increase the density of it. So it's the batteries are getting more abundant and more productive.
Yeah. And then of course there's the IRA money that's going to come off of that. 100 gigawatts at $45, $35 for the manufacturing and $10 for the putting it into packs, $45 per kilowatt hour that they're going to get from the government times, I mean, that's
100 gigawatt hours, that's $4.5 billion.
Billion. Yeah. That's a $1.25 a share.
Yeah.
Next year, just from that 100 gigawatt hours that they'll make in Austin.
Right.
Is anybody putting that in their numbers? I don't think so. I don't think anybody's putting that in their numbers. All right. So then we convert and we talk about the energy storage side of things. And the energy. So talk to me what you were seeing with the energy storage.
So that getting to 18% margin was a big deal. So one, they said it only had the one line. So that was why not getting to 40 gigawatt hours per year? Why not getting to 10 gigawatt hours per quarter? Is because they only had one line, again, going up to about 5 gigawatt hours. So them being at 3.7, 3.9 the last two quarters indicates that one line is producing nearly the full amount. And then the reduction is more about, packs being in transit, or once you get them installed, having a long time for the power companies, utility companies to turn them on. But it's basically means that one line is doing very well and the margin on that pretty good. I think the James Catt on Twitter indicated that the $413 per megawatt hour that they're making is probably closer to that $1.6 million per pack old price from a year ago, which again, a backlog of orders. So
Yeah.
once you move up to 2 million, 2.5 million from the new pricing, which was from late last year, then that moves your dollar per megawatt hour up to $500, $600 per megawatt hour, which means if you have your $300 cost, then you can have 40-50% margin. If you're conservative, 35 to 40%.
Yeah, so I think I was thinking about this morning, Brian. It seems to me that especially when it comes to the mega packs, that we really just have to napkin math it and say, okay, it's going to be 10,000 packs a year. It's going to be 40 gigawatt hours a year for that particular facility. And then when Shanghai starts running, that's going to be at 40 gigawatt hours. And that we can pretty well at this point assume that we're going to get virtually that full 40 gigawatts out of Lathrop next year.
Right.
Yes, the bookkeeping might be like this, and yes, production is up and down. When they're going to ship it, when they're going to receive it, when they're going to count it. But if we just kind of say, look, it's going to be 40 gigawatt hours a year, and it's going to be $500 a kilowatt hour. Okay, yeah. So it's going to be $20 billion a year in revenue.
Yeah.
At 25% margins. Is that fair?
Right. Yeah, I think so. Right.
So just $12 billion. I'm sorry, just five. $5 billion. $5 billion in profit.
Yeah,
that's $1.50.
Right.
Just from Lathrop.
Right.
And we have guys. I was watching a very enthusiastic supporter of Tesla on MSNBC. I mean, on CNBC, and he was saying $10 total profit by the end of 2025 for everything.
Yeah.
And I think if we throw in Shanghai, that now we're talking about half of that just from the two megapack factories.
Right. And then the there's also tax incentives for those very things that they do there. And the other thing is that they can become their own customer because they're doing all this new charging that they'll need. It's easier to make a new supercharging station with a megapack or multiple megapack with that, especially for if you get the semi trucks and Cybertrucks rolling out in large numbers. Those are more charging intensive. So then this way, for SpaceX, Starlink is their main customer, where they basically 80% of the launch is Starlink. Once you start ramping that up in big numbers, say end of next year or 2025 as latest, and getting up to the 100,000 semi trucks, then you'll need about 20,000 megapacks for your own purposes, right? So needing a lot of batteries, needing a lot of megapacks, and they become their own customer. But if they're also charging everyone else's vehicles, then that becomes where they install their own megapacks, and they would then get their own tax credit, 35-50% tax credits off of that. So
those ones that they're installing, yeah,
those ones installing
for their own use. It's just crazy. So again, I kind of like to pull this back into stock value. So let's just for fun say that each factory fully employed, fully deployed is $1.50.
Right.
And let's just say that, again, I think this is very conservative, that $1.50 will be fully taken up in 2024 by Lathrop. And then the next year, Shanghai will be fully taken up. And then the next year, some other factory, and the next year. So just one a year. This is so conservative compared to what I think is going to happen. I think they'll start announcing 2 at a time. But if it was just one a year, we're looking at $1.50, $3, $4.50, $6, $7.50.
Right.
We could be looking at $10 just in energy at that super conservative ramp.
That's right. And they said in the Master Plan 3 that the world needs about 60 megapack factories. So you need to have 600,000 megapacks out there. So you would build them in advance because the amount of solar and wind that's being deployed is, the total is 2 terawatt hours. 1.2 solar and 800 gigawatt hours of wind, and you're adding 30-40% each year. So they said ultimately that'll get to like 10 terawatt hours like that, but you'll be adding in your add-in rate gets towards the maximum sooner, that you hit up to, like when we go to 100 million cars or 80 million cars, whatever like that, and then you have to replace 2 billion, right? That you go to the max level, and then you have to have a decade or whatever of the max level or more. So same thing for adding megapacks and solar, is that you get to maximum add rate, and then you do that for a decade and a bit. So going to 60 megapacks happens before you have the full demand, because you need to have adding at the max capacity for a while. Even though there's a split between storage and other uses of it to gain the full transportation level.
Yeah, it turns out, at least according to one very sophisticated consultant that I watched recently, that the number one use of the megapacks is actually for load balancing, not just as a complement to solar and wind, which is a separate. It is a load balancing, obviously, issue. But no, she said that the load balancing is needed on the grid now.
Right.
It's dramatic benefits to the utilities that use it for load balancing now, and that's the number one application. Then comes solar and wind. Then, as you point out, you need it for all these charging facilities for cars and trucks.
Right.
And now we finally get down to things like factories and government and things like that. I mean, it's just, as Elon says, the TAM is unlimited.
And the other thing is that the Megapack factory and the 4680 factories are very, very small and fast to build, right? So only a target size thing for the Megapack, and the 4680 lines are like a fraction of the Nevada factory. That they were going to pop in a 4680 facility, which could go up to 500 gigawatt hours, they were saying, in the Nevada factory. At that they're like, oh, we only have half of it used currently for whatever, and then we're going to pop in this other line, these other lines for that. So it's something where it's clearly so much value for them. Every 100 gigawatts will give them $30 to $60 billion of revenue. So spending $3 billion for that stuff, because it's about $30 million per gigawatt hour. If they can drive that down to 20 million or 15, it becomes this highly valuable thing where, like, I need to add this in and work on supply chain to add it.
Yeah, and I'm a factory guy. I don't claim to know anything about battery manufacturing. It looks really complex and complicated, and you've got all these chemicals that have to hit exactly right, and thin pieces of metal, and oh my gosh, it seems like it's complicated. But I have to believe, based on anything I know about manufacturing, that once they get the first line up to maximum capacity or maximum throughput, that setting up the second line, the third line, the fourth line is going to be a ton easier than that first line was.
Right, because it was sorting out the issues of that mega roll thing that they were talking about, where you have the big sheet and cutting it and all that kind of stuff. So they're just working out all those little things. So it keeps running at, it's like printing out newspapers, where you have the big roll of things constantly coming out and then slicing it up and doing things. Right.
Yeah. So basically for you, the big takeaway from yesterday was that the 4680s we're all unhappy about how long it's taken. They don't seem to be that unhappy. Maybe they had a little longer timeline than we retail investors, but that the overall situation is looking good as far as what you can tell right now, with this 80% improvement quarter over quarter, and a drop of 20%. I mean, an improvement of also 20% in the scrap rate.
40% in scrap rate, 25%
40%.
in cost, right?
Yeah.
25%, right.
I know that they're shooting, I think, for 98 or 99% efficiency in terms of the scrap, or, like a 1 to 2% scrap rate. So it sounds like all that's doing well. And then as far as the energy storage side is concerned, seems like it's really just copy and print. I mean, it's like,
right. And the revenue recognition and the speed with which the Shanghai factory should spin up is way better, because China's power industry and everything else runs so much faster. So the building that will be fast, and then once they ramping up production will be fast, and then they'll get the revenue recognition out there faster because you have a factory, you run thousands of megapacks up the river, and then you put them by your solar and wind, and then they'll turn on super fast because that's just what China does.
Yeah,
so
and China is also ramping their solar so fast.
right,
Huge,
they're
cranking.
40% of the world total, like 400 gigawatt hours. They have the gigafactories of solar, so they got the lion's market share of that, because if they replace all that, all their power, one, they clean up their coal and the pollution, and then two, they import less other energy, because that was a problem when they were short coal and other things, and they'd import energy because they use twice as much as the United States. So 4,000 terawatt hours there at 8,000, which is like,
Yeah. So anyway, sounds like you were you were happy. I think, as usual, the retail investors and the people that pay attention were perfectly happy with the call yesterday. As I've said before, what I love about Elon on these calls, even though everybody is, oh no, Elon's going to talk again, is his transparency, his obvious honesty. He just says what's really going to happen. And it takes everybody about 4 days to go, oh, yeah, but what he really said was everything's great.
Right.
So I think it's just another typical call.
Well, it was also all kind of entertaining things. We haven't talked about the licensing of FSD, and then also where he threw in there, like, Neuralink can replace the limbs of people, make them cyborgs. So like the $6 Million Man, as opposed to using the other science fiction example of the Borg, from Star Trek. So it had negative connotations, but yeah. So
there was a ton. No, there was a ton. I'm going to cover the whole thing with Optimus. In fact, I already covered it by the time everybody's watching this. In fact, I'm going to put a card right here. If you haven't already looked at it, I did something with Scott with regard to what was said about Optimus that, I don't know, 1% of the pundits are covering. I mean, even the Tesla fans, even the YouTubers and the Twitter people, nobody's talking about what he said about Optimus. And it was huge. Find the card there to see what I talked about with Scott. Also, be sure to notify, because this weekend, I think either Saturday morning or Sunday morning, Brian's going to be back, and he's going to talk about his next big idea, because that's what Brian does. It is mind-boggling. The minute he told me, he only had to talk about it for 5 seconds, and I went, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So that's something to look forward to over the weekend. So we give him any kind of a teaser?
Basically, it built upon the fact that you can license FSD, and that you can apply the AI camera independent, and everywhere use any kind of video. So it's generally applicable and faster, and how you can monetize that in a even faster, better way.
All right. Well, there you go. There's the teaser. Either Saturday or Sunday morning. Look for that one. Hit the like, hit subscribe, hit notify, because you want to be sure you're notified about that one. And then, buy the books. And then what else, Brian? Oh, yeah. Follow Brian under nextbigfuture.com and Next Big Future on Twitter and on Patreon. And I think that'll do it. Brian, thanks so much for being on board.
Thank you, Randy.
All right. And for all of you out there, it's been great talking to you.